Probably scream at me because I forgot to click on something here. All right, forgot to click on something here. And are you watching the watch page too?
Yes, I can pause that.
Well, you don't have to pause it, just mute it.
Oh, mute it. Oh, I heard that background.
Yeah. Don't worry, I forget that every time too.
Okay.
All right. So, for those of you that are watching, you go ahead and let us know if you can see and hear us all right. My phone had to go and start.
Oh, there's some chats coming in.
Yeah. Want to make sure everything's working before. Okay. Jake says loud and clear. Hootie Hoo says loud and clear. All right. So I want to welcome everybody to our weekly live chat. This one is called Guns in History because we're just going to talk about guns in history. This week we have Clayton Marxer from the Adventure Cowboy joining us.
Howdy, howdy.
Thank you, Clayton, for coming over. And you know the rules for the channel. And previously we only enforced the no politics rule, but the channel was kind of getting out of hand previously, so we're going to start enforcing the keep it family friendly rule. Put it that way.
I'm all right with that.
Yeah, because we started getting late at night on previous chats, and things would start getting pretty loud. It reminded me of my years in college.
Yeah, I'm okay with family friendly.
Yeah. All right. So, got any questions for either Clayton or myself? Go ahead and feel free to post them. And again, the topic tonight is basically guns and history. And pretty sure Clayton is as much a history buff as I am.
I don't know if I'm quite to the same level as you. I'm a little bit jealous on your knowledge of history with detail in guns. And you have a lot of knowledge of guns that goes back, like, from 1880s on is kind of what I prefer. But
Right.
You like those black powder stuff. And I mean, I like them too, but, man, you have every detail of that memorized.
Well, there's a lot I don't know, but the way I make sure I kind of know what I'm working with is I spend more money on books than I do guns.
Hey,
and that's
a good idea.
Kind of my rule. And I'll tell you, with some of them old out of print books, that's not hard to do.
Mm-hmm.
I'll grab one here right quick. And another reason I like the black powder stuff is because where I work as a living historian, so we deal primarily 1840s. So 1840s, 1850s, that's kind of my forte. 1830s too.
Where is that at?
I work in Southern Colorado. I don't want to get too detailed on the chat just because I do work for the public as a government employee, and I would probably get in trouble if I had people coming in and bugging me while I was trying to do tours and stuff. But I'm basically a living historian. I get paid to dress up like it's 1840.
Yeah, that's cool.
And I have
a lot of that around here. Virginia City and Nevada City, where Alder Gulch, in Montana, was where gold was discovered. And it was a huge strike, and it's referenced even in the movie The Cowboys with John Wayne, the early scene as cowboys all left him to go to Alder Gulch and try their hand at mining.
Oh, okay. And that's the one up on the Ruby they're talking about?
That's where I live, yep.
Oh, okay. Well, I was supposed to be up in Wyoming You know, Du Bois is at.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they had a Indian Wars reenactment up there, and I was going to go with a good friend of mine, who's also a big history buff, Henry Crawford. I was going to go up there with him. We was going to play Buffalo Hunters, and then of course I found out how much it was going to cost me just for clothing for 1870s time period, and I thought, you know, I better hold off this year. Wished I would have, because I wound up being in 105-degree weather while he was up there in 70-degree weather.
Yeah. All that old clothes, all that stuff's expensive. Not to mention, although the guns are going to hold their value a little bit better.
Right.
But that being said, you know, you cover all this different history from, you know, mid 1800s on. What's your favorite era of firearms?
God, I'd have to say the early Colt days, the late 1830s to the mid 1840s, and that's basically because without this, we wouldn't have the modern revolvers.
Patterson, correct?
Yep, this one's a Patterson. This is a Uberti copy because I don't have enough money to buy an original. But yeah, this, and after this one, you know, you get the Walker revolver, which I don't have one handy here. I got them all over my uncle's where I do my.
Hey, while you got that Patterson out, you should show some of those people how it works, because some of my viewers that are on here might be looking at that and notice that there's no trigger.
Yep, and that's because the trigger is right there. So when you pull the hammer, the trigger drops down, which makes this gun very streamlined, but it's kind of a pain to cock because you don't have that trigger guard there that you want to roll over your finger when you're cocking it. So I found the best way to do it is you grip it like this when you first fire, and you pull the hammer back, and then once the trigger's down, you just push your finger up past it and lock it in.
Interesting. I think that gun right there was how Cimarron got introduced into the movie business on a large scale. When they were filming the movie Texas, I believe it was, by Michener, they were looking for a couple Pattersons, and I think he said, well, how about like 20 of them? I don't know the exact numbers, but he said he could get them all that they needed, and that's kind of where Cimarron, I mean, they've provided the firearms for probably a majority of the Westerns in the last 30 years.
Right. Yeah, I seen that show as a kid, and that was back before I really liked the Old West guns. I mean, everybody, well, I wanted to have a revolver and be like John Wayne, but I didn't know much about revolvers other than you had the Colt Single Action Army, and that was it.
Yeah.
Now that I'm older and I would have more appreciation for that, I can't find that movie anywhere.
Well, I was just, you know, before we got on here, we were talking about this deck of cards that I've got. I was trying to see if I could find the Patterson card. So for those of you that are wondering what I'm talking about, he's not on here. He'll see this eventually, but some of you will be familiar with gun websites on YouTube. He's been on YouTube forever, but one of the things that he was making for a while, and maybe still does, is these Old West playing cards. And I was showing Duke before we came on air that all of these cards have a little fact about a certain gun. Like that's Colt Lightning, talks about dates of manufacture and calibers. Pretty cool. Shameless plug for G-Webs. And I just dropped a deck of cards in my lap.
52 card pickup.
Yep.
And just a little extra history over here on the Patterson, because I've seen some guys commenting over there. So this revolver right here was not actually the first model that Colt ever produced. Colt experimented a lot with pistols and with the rifles. And a common problem they had in the early ones is they kept exploding, and that's because Colt had a shield that went over the back and the front half, and you had to take the gun completely apart to load it, just the same as this one. But he had those shields over there, so it was all covered. Well, at least chain fires, all 5 go off at the same time. There's nowhere for them bullets to go. Gun blows up. The only thing that didn't blow up on him was a rifle. So actually, his first guns he produced were rifles.
The revolving rifle.
Yep. And they basically, the general look is this with a trigger guard and then long stock on it. But
that was an 18. What year was that revolving rifle?
The first ones in Patterson were 1837s when he started producing. The first handguns were actually what's known as the baby Pattersons, and I mean they are small, 28 caliber. And in 38, he starts introducing the belt-sized pistols, and at the end of 38, early 39, you start seeing this. This is actually considered a holster pistol, and it was the largest that was commercially available. Now, he did experiment with a 52 caliber pistol, and I've seen pictures of that one prototype, and that was a elephant of guns. It was bigger than the Walker.
The rifling on that is fascinating.
Yeah, this Uberti has the original style rifling. I use this at work, so the barrel's a little dusty. But I can't remember, 11 lands and grooves, something like that. Real slow rate of twist in it. This gun's not accurate at all. Not like the originals. The originals were very accurate. This one is not.
There's going to be some safety sallies out there, not on the chat, but at some point watching this video, freaking out about you pointing the gun at them.
Yeah, exactly. And I get that a lot, them safety sallies, when I'm loading black powder. They don't realize that when you're loading the black powder, you're stuffing it all from the front there. It gets to be difficult to watch where the muzzle is because you got to make sure you can look down in and see if there's powder in there, that the ball's seated right.
It's a little complicated.
Yeah. The only time after I get the chambers loaded and I start putting caps on, then it's considered a loaded gun. But until the caps are on there, it ain't going to go off. Unless I have absolutely complete bad luck and lightning strikes me or something.
That'd be bad. So there's another movie, when you're talking about that revolving rifle, there's another movie where the revolving rifle makes a very, like it's a character within the movie. It's a Western. It's a John Wayne. I'm not going to give you any more than that.
Oh, I know which one you're talking about. Oh, God, now I can't even think of the name. El Dorado.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that one was actually, that's the root revolving rifle that he was using. So that's 1855. So that was after Colt did the
first generation. Yeah.
Yeah,
but as far as revolving rifles go, you don't see them in Western movies. That's probably the main one where you notice it.
Right. The revolving rifles, they were not, I won't say that they weren't popular, but they were not widely produced. I mean, the root guns, there's not a lot of root guns that I know of. And nobody, well, I don't think there's anybody currently that's making reproductions. There was a company that did for a while out of Italy, Palmetto Arms, I think is who it was. They made a copy of the 55 root rifles and carbines. But those are actually worth more than the originals now because they're so rare. Yeah, it was. Those were a lot of fun. The biggest one Colt had a failure with, though, was the revolving shotgun. So he tried to introduce that with the Patterson models, and then they tried to introduce that again with the root models. I've seen one prototype. I think there's one prototype with a 10-gauge root shotgun, 4-shot. And that was a beast. Judging by the picture, it looked like the cylinder was that big around.
I could see some complications with that.
Yeah.
While we're on the subject of guns that have been in movies, because I'm kind of a movie gun nut, what's maybe not your favorite, but what's one of your favorites or a couple of your favorite Western movie guns?
Oh, Jesus. Well, the Colt Siegel Action Army that's got to be one of them. Because that's one of the most well-known guns in history. And if it wasn't for the movie business, they wouldn't have been started reproducing them again.
Yeah.
For those of you that don't know, the whole reason why we got second and third generation Colt, or excuse me, third generation Colts, is all due to Hollywood. So Hollywood got something right from us.
Mm-hmm.
But one I'd have to say that you don't see often is in it's with Tom Selleck. Oh, what the hell?
Crossfire Trail.
Crossfire Trail, yeah, the Evans repeater. That is a gun that I didn't know what an Evans repeater was until I seen that movie.
Okay, so from the same, make sure that I'm not talking about the same gun. So I can't remember if that Crossfire Trail had, I think an 1876 Centennial model. It had the musket.
Yeah.
Stock on. Oh, I think I know the older guy had it, the Evans, right?
Yeah, I can't think of his name.
Wilford Brimley.
Yeah, Wilford Brimley. Yeah, the diabetes guy.
So
That's the one thing I remember is him doing all those commercials.
I've got a couple favorites from movies over the years. Top of the list would have to be the 74 Sharps from Quigley Down Under.
Oh,
That's why I have a Sharps.
Yeah.
That was like probably the coolest thing I'd ever seen when I was a kid was that Sharps. And then in Crossfire Trail and in Sons of Katie Elder, there's a unique 4570 that makes an appearance called a Remington Keen. It was a bolt action with a hammer, and it fed from underneath.
Now that you say that, I remember seeing that in Sons of Katie Elder. No, I completely forgot about that.
It's a super, super neat gun. And I'm surprised nobody's reproduced it.
I know where there's an original hanging up in a restaurant.
Well, they got one somewhere for Crossfire Trail, but super cool gun.
One problem with this one was it was sitting in a field for God knows how long, and it's just dust now. But you can still tell it's a gun. In fact, that guy, he found all kinds of guns in that field. He found a sawed-off Mossberg, which it was rusted shut, so he didn't have to turn in the ATF because it was never going to have a fire again.
Yeah.
And then he found a double-barrel Flintlock shotgun.
Wow.
And nobody that I know of has made a reproduction of them up until, well, there is one company that's been making them, but Pedersoli just started making a copy of them. So that one would have to have been 1830s.
Huh.
At the youngest. Tried to buy the double barrel Flintlock, and he told him I'd have to buy the restaurant to get it, so I didn't get it.
I had another one I was thinking of, but I just forgot it. I was trying to look at the chat on my desktop. The YouTube video is a little bit behind, so I'm just watching on the Hangout and then looking on my phone for the comments.
Oh, okay.
Trying to see if people are talking.
Yeah.
George Gooding said El Dorado. He got it right.
Yeah, I seen him pop that up about the time that I answered.
Just trying to read some of these comments so I don't ignore people. So I'll put this toward some of the viewers, whether on this live or in the video that gets posted afterwards. It'd be cool to see in the comments, what are some of your favorite unique guns in Western movies?
And if anybody says modern Henry, I'll slap them. I don't know what Western I was watching. I was watching one and Civil War era, and they're all carrying the modern Henrys with the
tube load.
Yeah, the tube load, which the Henrys did load that way, but not the way the modern ones do.
Right. And I will say the modern Henry does make, well, they call it their original Henry. They make a pretty faithful reproduction now.
They do.
But it is not their. So I love the Henry. The modern Henry is American made. Love it. I love their customer service, their warranties, all awesome. The lines of the gun have never been that appealing to me. It kind of looks a little bit like a crude Marlin. And then the giant gap between the magazine tube and the barrel, and then the tall sights. Just never been a huge fan of the way they look. And I like the King's loading gate on the side. The tube's cool, but I will say that was a good step for them this year to put the gate on the side.
They should have done that 10 years ago.
I've never wanted to own a Henry, really. Nothing wrong with them, but I just have all these other more traditional guns, which is what I'm into. But I could see owning one now. I really like the side gate thing. If they put that in 570, I might get one.
I got a Henry 22. It was first rifle. And when I first bought that, I could take it with the open sights and go out and knock primers out of shotgun shells offhand with it all day long. And I shot the crap out of that until it got to the point where I can't even hit a soda can at 50 yards anymore.
Yeah.
I pretty much shot the rifling out of it.
So my very first kind of negative experience towards the Henry rifles was with one of the 22s, the Golden Boy or whatever it was. I walked into one of the local gun shops probably 10 years ago, if that, maybe 8. And there was 2 of them taken apart on the bench the guy was working on. But I noticed they were both, the receivers were broke. And he had one of them, the brass facing up, and the other one, the insides were facing up. And the insides, I didn't know that it was just brass plated pot metal.
Yeah.
After I saw that, I was kind of like, oh man, that kind of lowered my opinion of Henry a little bit. But they've been putting out some stuff for the last couple of years, and they're pretty innovative. And man, they really, I will say, they've really supported the YouTube community and the guys that are shooting. So I'll give them props. They're getting closer to something that I'd want to buy.
The big thing with me is a lot of their guns are just so spendy. I've looked into.
Well, I shoot reproductions, so there's just. And somebody was asking me yesterday after I posted one of my videos of my one of my photos on Instagram of my 1886s, and he's wanting some advice on lever guns, and I'll just say what I told him was it completely depends on what you want the gun for. What is it that you're going to value about the gun? Are you looking for heirloom quality? Or are you looking for a truck gun? Because there's some huge factors there. And one of the things that he said, well, I really like the case coloring. I said, well, for case coloring, there's a lot of options out there, but they're going to be over $1,000. Some of them over $2,000. So if that's one of the options that you really want in a quality gun, be ready to spend some money on it. That's the hard part about lever actions anymore. Let's say 4570. If you want a 4570 that's less than $1,000, you're looking at something used or a Marlin, and we all know, the stuff that Marlin's gone through for, quite a while once Remington took them over.
Yep.
And I've got lots of buddies that have some of the newest ones that have been made in the last couple of years that have had no problems with them. So maybe they're getting stuff figured out. But, Marlin and Henry are kind of I take that back. Mossberg and Rossi are another couple options under $1,000.
Right. And Rossi, what I've been told, Rossi has gotten better. So their guns are getting better.
I got a buddy that has one of their guns chambered in 454 Casull. He loves it.
And there's nothing wrong with the Italian guns either. I mean, Pedersoli makes good cap and ball guns. They make good cartridge guns, but their Flintlocks I'm not a big fan of, other than the Brown Bess. I think the Brown Bess is the best Flintlock they produce. But all the other Flintlocks I've had from them, I haven't had good luck with. Birdie makes good guns, although I think some of you Birdie's long guns are being made by Pedersoli now.
So a lot of those Italian companies are kind of they're related in some different ways. They work together on some different stuff. Some of them don't really. I don't think Chiappa really works with Pedersoli very much, but I've heard of some working together among some of the other companies. But if you're looking for a traditional lever action rifle, the tooling for building those is in Italy or Japan. There's a couple United States companies that are producing similar guns, like Bighorn Armory with their Model 89, which is just a 92 and an 86 kind of melted together. And they make an amazing gun. I would love to have one of their guns. But at this point, I can't really afford one of their guns. The only reason I can afford the guns that I have now is because of my relationship with Cimarron. And, that's these. I got an 1886 back here that ever since I was a teenager and saw my first 1886, it was something that I dreamed about. But even back then, if you saw an 1886 in a store on a shelf that was in decent condition, it was a heck of a lot of money. And I could never afford to buy one just outright. So just put in a lot of work, and the right people saw some of my videos, and then I got a sponsorship, and that helped me get my dream gun. So now I got 3 of them.
Yeah, and just because something's cheap too on those, don't mean that you're getting a bad buy. Might have to put a little work into it, but take for instance this lever action here. This is the 87 lever action, and this is the cheap Century Arms International. Comes out of Zhengzhou, China, and I'll tell you, it's a little stiff. You first get it, it's a little rough. It does need some polishing to make it work good, but I took this out of the range, out of the box, and started shooting shells through it, and never had a single hang-up. The only thing I noticed is that on the last shell never ejects, and that's because it's the shells are kicked out by the next shell coming up, and if there's not one there, it's not going to kick it out. And I was watching a guy on Instagram, and I'm going to give him a shout out here if you haven't seen him. He's Ohio Hammer and Lever on Instagram. He has some really cool videos. He was shooting the Chiappa version of this, which is a $1,000 gun. And the Chiappa did the exact same thing this does, and it doesn't kick out the shell on the last round. The only thing I've got to complain about this is on the loading. Things aren't really polished on this gun. Those 2 little lifter blocks there, right here, you got to put your thumb in past them to push the shell in when you're loading it. You got to polish them because they've got some sharp burrs, and I did split my thumb when I first loaded this. But cheap shotguns, if you want a lever action shotgun, well, this is a real good viable option.
Who made that one?
It's made in Zhangzhou, China, but it's imported by CAI. Century Arms International.
Cimarron's starting to offer one of those, and I think it might even be made by the same company. I'm pretty sure it's Chinese built because they wanted, Chiappa has the expensive one, but they're bringing in a more affordable option like that. That may be something that I get just because it's got a 30-inch barrel on it. You can put a few shells in it, and even though it's not real popular to hunt with birds with a lever action, I kind of want to. How many people do you see out on video shooting ducks with a lever action 1887 shotgun?
Exactly.
I want to be that guy.
Right. And the other one that was comes out of China is Norinco, and I've heard nothing but bad from the Norinco one. So unless you do a lot of work on them, but I've also got the good old double barrel. You've all seen it in my videos. This one's from Cimarron, and I've actually had more problems with this one cycling ammo than the lever action. There's something about cheap ammo, anything real cheap. It just doesn't like it.
So one of the things, and I haven't had an issue with my 1883 hammerless yet, but one of the things doing some research on it, the steel-headed shotgun shells, the cheap ones that with the steel head, have more trouble than your brass.
Oh, I just took this out to the range a little over a month ago, and I tested some Cellar Malott No. 4 buckshot, which is brass, and I tested some cheap Fiocchi buckshot, which I don't remember if that was brass or steel, but neither one of them worked worth a crap in this shotgun. In fact, Cellar and Malott was the worst. I mean, I had to crank it over my knee to get it to break open. And a lot of it has to do with right here, how this extractor matches up to the barrel lug. And it swells up in there and it just locks it up. But I will say Winchester AA shotgun shells work the best out of this. I mean, you open it up and it's just like butter.
It's a cool gun.
Yeah. And the nice thing about this is it's got cylinder bore, so you can shoot slugs out of it pretty easy.
So this winter, I had the option of getting that gun or the 18. I wanted one of the shotguns because I wanted to turkey hunt this spring. The lever action, I don't know if it was a 3-inch chamber. It might have just been 2 3/4, and I wanted a 3-inch chamber, but I know probably the biggest reason I didn't get the lever action this winter was that it wasn't quite available yet, and I really wanted to hunt turkeys this spring with a new Western shotgun. So I looked at the double barrels, and I didn't really like the thought of walking around because we were spot and stock hunting these turkeys, and I didn't like the thought of walking around with both hammers cocked back. Or my buddy was with me with his semi-auto shotgun, so we were kind of competitive, and I didn't want to have to cock the hammers back while he's already got 5 rounds downrange. So I went for the hammerless, which was their 1883. It had a 28-inch barrel, 3-inch chambers, and first shot just dropped one like a rock. So
nice.
Yeah, I was tickled.
I wanted to do some turkey hunting this spring when I was up in South Dakota, but I just never, when it's cabin season, you never have time to do anything.
Right.
And I'm sure you got as much of the bad weather as what we got over there in South Dakota. It was
we had 6 weeks, 6 weeks below zero this year, which is the worst February on record. There was ducks and geese just laying all over dead down where I was calving because they Well, we thought that they maybe were freezing, but the biologist said what was actually happening is we had more snow than we usually get. Usually snow blows off here, but this year they were having to plow lanes out in the fields just so the calves had somewhere to lay and so that they could get a tractor out there to feed.
Right.
And the biologist said what was happening was that they just weren't getting any gravel to digest the food that they were eating because everything was under ice and snow. So they're just basically starving to death.
Yeah. Well, last year, where I was out in South Dakota, I think last year was the worst. This year was not the greatest, but last year was the worst because we had the snowstorm come in when we was calving the big calves. We had one come in while we was calving the first year heifers, which we do a month ahead, or excuse me, 2 weeks ahead. So 2 weeks ahead of time. And then the big cows started calving. That was right around April Fool's Day. And we got something like 20 inches of snow, and then the temperature dropped that night to 20 below zero. When we got up the next morning, we were bringing in calves to the shop and the cabin barn because they're born in that cold. I mean, they just don't get up. And we brought in 7 of them, and we saved 2.
That's an expensive loss.
Yeah, and 5 of them. All the 5 that died were all dead before noon. We brought them in about 9 o'clock because that was when we was finally able to get plowed out to where we could get out of the yard and across. What's funny is across the field there wasn't any snow, but right there in the yard it was so deep we couldn't move. We had to shovel the snow out with tractors. But and then the 2 that we saved, those 2 wound up dying because they had, their ears froze off, tails froze off. One of them, his feet froze off, and they just didn't make it past play.
So I'm looking in the comments right here, and old Hootie Hoo, first thing he said, I told him he should get that shotgun because it was a Chinese version. He was a little nervous, and he says, I'm broke. My budget says I need to sell all the guns. That's a horrible idea, Adam. It's
and this one, I think
he says, I've never seen snow deeper than 2 inches. Well, this fall he's coming up here to hunt with me.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah. In the 3rd week of November. So he may get to see some deeper snow than 2 inches.
Yeah. And then on the thing you mentioned about 3-inch chambers, you cannot get this lever action with a 3-inch chamber. That's just because the geometry of the lock mechanism, when that pulls out, it can't pull out a 3-inch shell because when those expand, there's like an extra 1/2 inch. So when they're shot and the start crimp is out, it's actually 3.5. That's why this has problems with sometimes with 2 3/4 inch shells, is because when they expand out, they're 3 3/4 inch. So with the geometry of this, 2 3/4 is the max you're going to get.
Yeah. Still cool. I still want one.
But even with a 2 3/4 inch mag, I mean, you get close enough to a turkey, that's going to do a number on them.
It doesn't really matter what make of the 1887 you get. From what I've read, they all have issues. Like, there's not an easy way to just load them quick. There's guys that practice and practice and practice and get really good, but it's not a super comfortable loading, and that's just by design. And from what I've read, Browning had better ideas for the shotgun, but Winchester was insisting on a lever, so he did the best he could coming up with a lever.
And I've been told that the Winchester, the originals, were fairly decent guns. They're just a pain in the butt to load, like this one is. The one down thing I've got to this Chinese gun is you cannot carry one in the chamber safely because the spring on this hammer is ridiculous, and the spring on the trigger is ridiculous, and the only way you can cock this is to take your thumb and your offhand and then press it in like that. Then it'll cock. And you cannot safely let that down to the half cock without dropping it like that.
Is that something you could adjust, or is that also a function of the ejection mechanism?
It's not to do with the function of the ejection. It's just that this B spring right here is super stiff, which it needs to be on some shells. And then the spring on this trigger is actually a coil spring. And I took this thing apart and I put it back together, and I didn't get things quite lined up right because that coil isn't quite right. But you couple that together with the fact that that hammer is got corners on it like razor blades, and this just does not make for a good shotgun to carry with a round in the chamber.
Interesting.
But I can show you that there is some effect on the main spring with the lever, because if I close the lever here, if I pop the hinge on the lever, that's just
Dang.
That's why this is actually a copy of the 1903, because it's got this hinged lever that locks that shut so that it doesn't do that. But if you want to let this down safely, what you do is you get the lever about right there, reach in and grab the trigger, pull it back, and then slip your finger out right quick, and it lets the hammer down. But, I mean, if you see a bird, it doesn't. Cool. Yeah, they're cool. They're fun. But if you want to take this hunting, I mean, if you see a bird, it doesn't take more than a quick second to.
Yeah.
And you can pull up on it.
Well, the 30-inch barrel will give you a little reach.
Yeah, I got the coach gun.
Yeah.
I like coach guns. My shoulder doesn't like coach guns, but I do.
Yeah, I saw somebody in the comments was talking about the recoil of 4570, and that kind of goes along with the same thing as the longer barrel, and the extra weight really helps.
And it depends on what type of round you're shooting. If you're shooting a round rated for a Marlin, that's going to knock you around. If you're shooting a traditional black powder equivalent round, it's not bad.
Yeah, and pretty much everything I shoot is suited for my Sharps, or the 1886, both of which will handle everything that the 1895 Marlin will. The 1886 is a little stronger than the Marlin. But I hunt. So, I mean, I don't need hot loads to hunt, but I like them. I will say one thing. My Sharps and a couple of my lever guns really shoot the Hornady lever evolutions really well. So, with my Sharps, if I take like the Remington core lock, standard old 4570 round, at 300 yards, I have to flip up the ladder sight and just have the slide at the bottom. But if I shoot with the lever evolution 325 grain round, I don't even have to lift my ladder sight. I just hold a little higher towards the top of the target and peg it every time.
Are you shooting a Pedersoli Sharps, or?
Mine is Cimarron Billy Dixon, but it's manufactured by Army Sport, so Chiappa.
Oh, okay.
They sell Billy Dixon made by Pedersoli or the Billy Dixon made by Chiappa. Years ago, Chiappa had a bad rap, and a lot of it was probably deserved quality control. What I've noticed over the last several years after Reno kind of took over the family company, their quality control seems to have gone up. The Chiappa guns that I've handled in the last several years have been real good. I mean, that 1886 I was just holding was a Chiappa made 1886. So I have a Chiappa made 1886 and a Pedersoli made 1886. The Pedersoli it's their deluxe, super smooth. I mean, it's like butter. The only lever that I've ever operated that was smoother than my 1886 deluxe was a Bullard, and most people won't even know what that is. But now the Chiappa 1886 doesn't have quite as smooth of action, but it's more. Got it because it's a workhorse. My deluxe is so nice, and the wood is so pretty and glossy. gosh, I'm just so afraid of scratching it. And guns are made to be used, but still, you don't want to damage them unnecessarily.
Right.
And it's an heirloom, so I got the Chiappa one because it's got more your standard wood, standard stock, straight grip. Not so worried about dinging it up. Fact is, it'll look kind of cool with some character.
The reason I asked if your sharps is Pedersoli, because I've got Pedersoli sharps, but I can only shoot black powder equivalent loads out of it because it's labeled on there black powder cartridge only. And they say on the Pedersolis that you can really easily spring that breech block, and if you spring a breech block and a sharp's good enough, you'll never ever use it again.
So is that an older one? Because the newer ones, I've fired full house loads and I've never had any issue.
2015 is when I bought it. Yeah, is when I graduated college. Bought it in 2015.
Huh.
And it's stamped on the barrel, and they say don't ever exceed 18,000 psi.
Which sharps is it?
It's the Cabela's Hunter model.
Okay.
Um,
They
with Black Hills Cowboy loads, when I first got it, the gun would shoot, a 1-inch group at 100 yards, which I was happy with.
yeah.
I tried shooting black powder through it, and I've got the bore so screwed up with paper off my paper patch of bullets that got pertinized in the bore that I don't know if I'm ever going to get it clean, but it shot really good right out of the box.
Yeah, that Pedersoli Sharps business rifle, I think it was 2016. I had made a video for that. I shot everything from the 250 grain lever evolutions out of it, which that's mostly what I shot because I had a bunch of that sent to me. But I mean, I shot everything up to the 430 grain Magnum loads from Powder River cartridge, and not one issue, no signs of any issues. But it also didn't say on the barrel black powder loads only.
Yeah, mine very clearly stamped as black powder only, so I make sure if I shoot smokeless, I stay under that. I shoot what's safe for a trapdoor 45-7.
Right. What price range was the Cabela's Hunter in? I mean, ballpark. You don't have to tell me exactly.
I paid right at between 1,000 and 1,100. I don't remember the exact number, but it was not completely out of the ballpark. It wasn't like buying a Shiloh.
Yeah.
As much as
Well,
Shiloh.
I mean, even the fanciest Pedersoli there is barely touching the Shiloh prices.
Oh god! The last time I looked it up, I think I just wanted as simple a plain Jane rifle as I could get with a vernier sight, and it was starting out like $2,400. I thought, holy crap!
And there's a waiting period.
Yeah.
To get it built.
Like 3 years now.
I don't know what it's at now, but it was quite a while the last time I heard.
So I was looking at a 5090.
The big 50.
Yeah, I get it. And I thought about a 5140, and then a guy that shoots a lot of, he shoots sharp rifles almost on a daily basis. He told me, he said, you're wasting nothing but powder once you get past 90 grains in a 50 cal. He said, unless you had 6 foot of barrel on it.
Like I had a chance to get a 45 120, and it's cool and all, but I mean, I wouldn't even mind. I'd like to have a 4590, but I also don't like having to load everything.
Yeah.
I like to be able to, if I have a reloading set. If I want to reload, I want to be able to reload. But I also want to be able to just go to the store and buy it off the shelf if I want. And once you get outside of 4570, that makes it a little difficult. That's why I didn't keep that 5095, the Cimarron Presidio 76 rifle.
Oh, okay, the El Presidio.
Yeah, it was a Texas Ranger commemorative.
Yep.
I loved that gun, and that was a soft shooting gun. I mean, it had some kick, but it was so soft. You could shoot it all day long, and you're throwing 300 grains downrange, so still was deadly. I loved it, but the ammo for that, crazy expensive, and there's very little of it. And then the reloading components was kind of ridiculous too. So I didn't keep that one.
And to be honest with you, if you're going to load smokeless 4570, there's nothing that you can load smokeless in a 4590 that you aren't. Basically, 4570 is as big as you can load for smokeless, what I've been told. You can't load up a 45 or 110 with smokeless and be safe. There's just too much length there. So if you're doing black powder, yeah, it makes a lot of difference. But if you're just loading smokeless, stick with 4570. We'll do everything you can do.
Right. Yeah, I agree. In the comments.
Yeah, I've been watching them. I just haven't had a chance to. There was one in there. Jeremy was asking me if I'd shot slugs out of the shotgun yet. That's what it was. No, I have not.
And Jake Away was asking about our opinion on the 1885 single. They're awesome. That I would love to have one. I like the looks of the 1874 Sharps better. There's just something about that hammer on the side. I love it. But the 1885 is a solid gun, and I would really like to have one.
Is that the high wall or is that the?
That's the high wall.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I know there's a high wall, there's a low wall, and then there's another one that there's a reproduction of. They're all single shot 4570s. I can't remember.
Yeah, the high walls are awesome. Some people will say that they're an improved Sharps. I don't think they're an improvement, really, except if you're really, really a stickler for where your hammer hits and you want it to hit dead center, then, yeah, the 1885's probably what you want to go with. But I don't have any problem hitting stuff with my old side lock.
The 1885, someone described to me as a breeding of the rolling block and the Sharps rifle.
Yeah, I mean it's a falling block, so it's a lot stronger than the rolling block, but it's got that inline hammer like a rolling block does.
Which that's also on my list. I'd love to have a rolling block.
They're cool. I don't know. I've shot a couple, but I just really prefer the Sharps. And I would totally take an 1886 or an 1885 as well. I've kind of been keeping my eye out. Cimarron for a while was selling the ones with the deluxe, like the deluxe trigger guard, and that's kind of what I wanted. But I don't know if they are still offering that. Oh, somebody saw the Untitled scope on the gun that I'm holding.
That was what I was just about to say.
Okay, so since people are asking, this is a really special gun, and there is a video on my channel. One of the very first videos that I made was a gun review on this, and I need to do another one now that I understand video making a little bit better, and maybe one that doesn't have so much graphic content, because it, amazingly enough, that one has not gotten taken down. It did get flagged, but I mean, there's the gophers exploding and, you know, close-ups of it too. And it got flagged, but I submitted it for manual review and they let it pass. So I was stoked, but this is for those who haven't seen that video, this is a Remington Matchmaster model 513T. It's a Target 22. These were really popular in around the 1950s. In the middle of the last century, there was a lot of shooting clubs, and I guess they didn't have as much social media and YouTube and stuff to take up their times and take up their free time, so they had shooting clubs. And my grandfather was in one of those clubs, and this was his gun. The scope is a 20 power fixed Untitled scope. and you can adjust the objective from anywhere from like 25 yards out to 300. So, you know, when I'm shooting gophers out of my truck, usually they're anywhere from, probably 20 yards to 70 yards, most of them. So I just adjust the objective to 50 yards. You can shoot farther or closer, but you got about 10 or 15 yards there where you can see them pretty clear. If you're outside of that range on your objective, then it's pretty fuzzy. But when it is clear, you can count the eyelashes on a gopher a long ways away. When we go gopher shooting, I pick my spots that I'm going to shoot, and I'll call them. You want the left ear or the right ear? I was telling Duke before we started this that the last time I was shooting it, we went out onto some private land and we're shooting gophers, and then we got a box of 20 gauge shells and put them out on gopher mounds at 50 yards, and we're taking turns trying to shoot the primers and, you know, set off the shotgun shell facing away from us. And this thing will do it all day long. You can put 20-ounce Pepsi bottle caps on fence posts at 100 yards and shoot them to your heart's content. It's an accurate gun. And it's pretty special. I mean, it was my grandfather's, and he gave it to me. But it's kind of got some cool stuff. I mean, he has a case that he built for it, but it's got a shooting glove, thick felt padded with leather. And then he's got, this is a sling now. A lot of people think of a sling as just that sling that you hook over your shoulder, but you know, a shooter's sling goes over your arm, and it's still set from my grandpa, so it's too short for me. I haven't needed to use it, but there's a attachment point on the front of this gun here where this just clips in. And for those who've never shot with a sling before, it just gives you extra tension. So you put it on your arm and wrap your hand like this. And so you have, you know, stability here into your shoulder. You have your support arm lifting, but then you've also got this tension coming to your humerus. I mean, this would be tighter and up in the middle of my humerus. And so it just gives you a little bit more, I always called it like skeletal stability. You're using your bone structure to give you more stability. But pretty cool. Then he had, now, my grandpa was a farmer. You know, his whole life he was just a farmer, and he, not just a farmer. That was a horrible thing to say. He was a farmer, and he was proud of it. But he didn't have money for a lot of accessories, so he brazed a nut on here for this T-handle. So this is a popular target shooter's accessory. You take this T-handle and put it into that nut, and then when you're shooting offhand, you can lock your elbow into your hip and just support the gun that way. And it makes it really, really stable for offhand shots. And then if you want to get like super, super stable, take off your butt cap and you put this handy dandy bracket that he made on it and put it in your armpit.
That's awesome.
It is awesome. That's a treasure right there. I have some guns that are worth more monetarily, but that's the most valuable gun that I own.
Well, with a little practice, you can compete with Kirsten Joy Weiss.
So I know Kristen, and I've talked to her. I don't think I could compete with her.
No.
Now, she'd get a kick out of that gun.
Right.
She'd probably make a video that went viral. Probably make a ton of money too. But if I make a video with it, it's not going to go very far because I don't look like Kristen Joy Weiss.
I just seen there at the Cody Firearms Museum, they've got a exhibit on her now.
So I went through and did a video, like a walkthrough video of the Cody Museum with their permission before they made the new layout.
Yeah.
And so now I got to go back because I want to see the new layout.
Yeah, my buddy I was talking about that I was going to meet up there in Du Bois after the event was over. He went up there to Cody, which was they was redoing it the week that he was up there, and he got up there. They just done it, and he knows I think he knows all the curators there at the Firearms Museum. He said they were all out because they spent so much time on it, but he said it was pretty awesome.
Yeah. That Ashley Lubinsky, that is the curator for it. She has an amazing passion for firearms and firearms history and an amazing knowledge of firearms. She's a perfect person to have in there. Plus, she's also got pretty active social media, and she connects with a new generation of people that might not otherwise be interested in a museum of old guns.
And it's not too common you find a lady that's got that kind of interest in firearms.
Right.
Which makes it all much better. I want to get there one of these days. And go through there.
It's worth it, but give yourself some time because you want to see the rest of the museum. There's 5 museums in one building. And,
right.
They're all worth seeing. So you want to give yourself a full day. You could spend a full day just in the Firearms Museum before you got just overload information. And I don't know how the new layout is going to be, but the main museum upstairs, you could spend all day up there. But then if you take the elevator and go downstairs, a lot of people didn't realize that was an option that would go through there. So hopefully in the new layout, that's a little bit better advertised. But in the downstairs, there's more displays, but then there's drawers and drawers and drawers and drawers and cabinets with, you pull them out and they're see-through of, I don't know how many thousands of guns are down there. But
well, I want to go up there and do some filming, and the first thing I want to look at is anything Colt related.
I will give you some advice if you go film. So go watch my video and you can kind of see some of the challenges I had. The glare on the glass is rough, man. And the other thing is sound. So I filmed that whole thing with my GoPro. So Ashley, I talked to her. She said, yeah, you can come film. Just let the people at the front desk know that you talked to me. And I did, but they wouldn't let me take my monopod in, which I was using for a handle. I had it all shrunk down, but I was using it for a handle for my GoPro. They wouldn't let me take that in there. So I was just holding on to the little clip on the bottom of my GoPro mount. So every time I'd move my hand or whatever, it'd make noise. And it's a museum, so you're kind of trying to be quiet anyway. So that's a perfect place for your lavalier mic.
Right.
I need to get one of those.
Well, if I go up there, I'm going to call and get it set up because I film with a tripod because I use such a heavy camera, and
they won't let you take the tripod in there. I'd almost bet.
No. Things I know a guy that knows all of them. I'm going to see if he'll sweet talk him into it for me.
I hope it works for you because people do film in there.
Right. And if it doesn't, I'll find a cameraman. I'll get somebody to run a camera for me while I'm doing stuff. But I can kind of see why they don't want monopods or tripods in there.
Yeah. Well, if somebody was a jackwagon and they were just going in there with the idea of filming, but they actually wanted to do some damage, a tripod could do some damage.
Oh, yeah.
Hooty hoo. I'm glad you think my rifle's awesome. When you get up here, I'll let you shoot it.
All right.
Trying to read some more comments here.
Yeah, I was buying some film too.
Oh, when we were talking about the snow, And Hootie Hoo coming up here to hunt, he commented that he's got to get some boots. Yes, you do. Don't get cheap ones.
And snowshoes.
Well, I have snowshoes, but I hardly ever need them. It doesn't usually get that deep. And the elk usually, by the time the snow gets that deep up high, the elk are usually down lower. So
That's one thing. I went elk hunting once, and keep in mind, I've never really done much big game hunting. I've wanted to. I've only been deer hunting once, and I wasn't successful, but that was black powder season, and by that time, all the deer are spooky. I can't get within a quarter mile of them. I'm shooting a muzzle loader. The one time I went elk hunting is I bought an over-the-counter Plains elk tag out here because the Plains elk got so bad that they just opened it to first come, first serve. And I took my sharps out, and I figured, even though I'm shooting a hard cast bullet, big as that is, that ought to be able to, knock down an elk in one shot. And I found out from somebody else later that no, I would have just had it pass through, and they probably would have run 15 miles before they died. But anyway, last day I went out in this area, and I hadn't seen anything for elk sign except for some old sheds that were several years old. And I just happened to sit down there for lunch, and all of a sudden I see this nice, I think it's about a 5-point bull come out. He starts walking in front of me, and he's only like 50 yards out. And I thought, perfect shot. So I get the rifle on him, and I'm tracking him, and I'm waiting for him to stop. And he's not walking fast, but I just don't want to bugger up the shot. So I'm following him. And he finally stops, and he looks at me. I'm getting ready to take the shot, and I notice there's something silver shining between me and him. And I look, and it's a sign that says boundary, US private land behind this site. He stepped right across the property line off the public land I was on private land, which I didn't have permission to be on. Stopped right there, turned around, looked at me like, screw you, buddy.
Sometimes I think they know. Well,
yeah.
I know they know, but sometimes I think that they know they're in your sights.
Right. And now that I know that the type of ammo that I was using, I would have just, I would not have been able to, probably wouldn't have recovered that animal because it's.
I would debate that, Duke. I honestly would. I've been around a lot of cast stuff, and if you think about the amount of buffalo and game that died before we ever had any sort of jacketed or hollow point or anything like that, the hard cast is super effective. I personally like to break shoulders when I'm shooting game because I don't like to go after them. I don't like to have to trail something into a blizzard or into the dark. If I can help it, I like them to drop right where I shoot them. So I usually shoot high shoulder. Lose a little bit of meat, but that's better than losing an entire animal. And a lot of that comes from guiding too. I guided for years, so I've seen everything as far as what happens with different shots. But a hard cast going through double lungs, it might not expand, but it's already making a 1/2-inch hole. So it's very deadly. Some people mistakenly think that hard cast won't expand, so it's not going to be as deadly, but almost guaranteed most people that you hear say that haven't actually shot a game animal with hard cast.
Gotcha. Well, I know I've shot prairie dog with a hard cast, and it's just hole in, hole out.
Yeah.
And
they still die though.
Yeah. You shoot them with a hard cast 40 size 70. That bullet, makes up their entire lung, size of their lung. So you hit them dead center, they're not coming back. But I just, I've got some bullets now that I can use for hunting. I mean, they're pure lead, so I'd have to be really close now if I was to shoot, because I shot a jackrabbit, and this is one of those things that I didn't know he was there. He was actually behind my target board, and I'm shooting at 300 yards, so didn't see him behind there. All I was, I shot, and instead of gray dust from the shale that was at the target range, I see a puff of white. And I went back there and I found a couple legs and a couple ears. And I must have hit him right here. But I picked up that bullet's 500 grain pure lead. That bullet was that big around from hitting him.
Huh.
Yeah.
So on Jakeaway, he said, if ordering a single shot for a target, how important is a double set trigger in your opinion? He has one on his 50 percussion and his 45 flintlock, but never shot a sharpshooter an 85 with a single trigger. In that scenario, if I'm shooting target, I would absolutely want the double set trigger. The double set trigger on my sharps, without setting the trigger, this is standard trigger, is about 8 pounds. And setting that trigger is 16 ounces. So you have some options there. If you have the double set trigger, you don't have to set the trigger to fire the gun. And in some cases where I'm spot and stock hunting, I'm in brush, and a lot of your shots are going to be a quick snap up and shoot. I don't like the set trigger because it's too light. I mean, your finger's coming up, and you'll have it go off before you're even where you want to be on the animal. So in those situations, I just like the regular 8-pound trigger because it's a fast. Everything happens really fast. You got adrenaline going, and it's a very deliberate trigger pull. However, if you're shooting a target, anybody that's ever shot targets knows that a heavy trigger pull sometimes cause more problems than it's worth. So that's my 2 cents.
My sharps is very similar. My single trigger pull is like 8-10 pounds, somewhere in there. But I've got my trigger pull set to where I just barely feels like feeling a hair go across the tip of your finger. I mean, I just start to bring my finger in when I'm on target and touch it. I like it at the same time I don't like it. Because if you ain't quite on target or you twitch at the wrong second, it's, you don't get that shot back. But yeah,
if you shoot it enough, for me anyway, after I've shot any sharps that I'm testing that has double set triggers, if I shoot it enough, I love the set trigger because you get to where you have amazing trigger control because it is sensitive, and that little spot on your finger, you get to where you really get a real good feel for what that gun's going to do with just a little bit of pressure on that part of your finger. And for that reason, I love the double set triggers. I like having the option of, if I'm in the brush and I need a heavier trigger, I've got it. If I need the light trigger and I'm target shooting, or, let's say I have an elk at 300 yards, which I've done before. Here's an example. Several years ago, it was like 2015, I was on the Outdoor Channel show Sasquatch Mountain Man. And the guy that hosts that is Laramie Miller. He's a friend of mine. He invited me to be on it. And we'd been hunting for a couple days, and we couldn't find any bulls. So he was like, how can we make this cool, even though there's no bulls in this herd? And we had a horse colic, and so we were out of time. We had to get off the mountain. And I said, well, if we shot cows, if we had a double, that would look cool. Him with his hawk and me with my sharps. So we got in on these cows as close as we could, and it was 210 yards. And he's like, man, I just don't feel confident taking a shot like that with my hawk, or I don't feel right taking a shot like that with my hawk. And even though I could hit it, there's too many variables. And I said, well, I'll shoot one. And I told the cameraman, I was like, this is going to look cool, but you just get behind me, and I want me and the elk in the same frame. There's not going to be any fancy editing. I'm going to do an offhand shot on this thing. And in that case, I pulled that set trigger, and I needed that light touch.
Yeah. That's amazing how much a trigger pull can throw you off at distance.
Yeah. Yep. Well, Duke, do you have any more questions for me? I got just a few more minutes before I need to sign off.
Okay. I can't really think of anything. I'm getting tired. My brain's starting to shut off. So I think it's probably a good time to probably call her quits here as well. But yeah, for Jake, double set trigger would be definitely a good thing to have. Look to the comments here.
I would like to thank everybody that commented on this video, and I'm sorry if I missed anybody. If anybody directed anything at me and I missed it, I'm sorry. This is only my second time ever doing a live deal on YouTube, so and it sounds like it's going away. So,
well, the Google Hangouts is going away, but the live chat will still be there. It's just going to be, who knows?
Okay, cool.
I'll have to play around with it and see, and I'll let you know if it's simpler or the same or pain in the butt. But,
yeah.
So yeah, if it turns out to be too much of a pain, well, this might be the last live chat you ever see me on. So.
Well, I'm glad I get to be that guy.
All right. Well, George Gooding says it's been very informative, and thank you.
Well, for any of my folks that either are on here or they're going to watch it later, go follow Duke. Duke's got some good information. He's got a couple channels. You want to just tell them what your channels are?
Yeah, there's this channel, which this is just for live streams, and then there's my main channel, which is Duke Frazier Productions.
And that's the one that I'm most familiar with.
Right. That's my main channel where I upload my regular videos. This channel is just for these live streams. And the reason I do that is I don't want the live streams to take away from my content on my main channel.
Gotcha. And then you have an Instagram and Facebook too for Duke Frazier Productions?
Yep. So Instagram is Duke Frazier Productions. The Facebook page is the same. And I don't post to Instagram very often. Mostly what I post over there has to do with my holster business. But if you want to go over and follow me, sometimes I post stuff from over at the range. And on the Facebook, I usually do some type of post over there related to what's going on with the channel. That's more about what I'm doing video-wise. So you can get over there and check that out. I'll put links to all that down there in the description after this video, after we get done. And looks like by saying their goodbye. So if you got any last minute questions, post them now. Give it a couple of minutes here.
Okay. Well, I'm glad they think it was informative.
Yeah. Yeah, this is kind of how, because I said this in the video earlier, but my live chats, they really wasn't going the direction I wanted to, but this is kind of how I wanted my live chats to be. So I'm very, very happy with how this one turned out.
Cool. There's, for those of you that are interested in hunting with these old guns, if you're into podcasts, I did a podcast with Cody Rich that owns Powder River Cartridge Company, and his podcast is called The Rich Outdoors, and it is episode 88, and we did a whole podcast episode talking about these old school guns like the Sharps. Not quite as old school as what Duke usually is into, but the more like late 1800s cowboy guns and hunting with them. So if you guys are interested in that, it's The Rich Outdoors, episode 88. And it kind of the same thing, talking about history and ranching and hunting and old guns.
And I do like the modern guns, just for the record.
Well, where's your rifle? Do you have your new rifle there?
No, I got it locked up in my closet so nobody mess with it. So I'll have to remember that in the future. But yeah, I think people have seen this on the live chat before. Well, some of them probably have, but it's the Savage 6.5 Desert Tac, and I love the gun. I don't like the bolt handle as much as I thought I would, but the gun is a tack driver. So if you're looking for a cheap long-range precision rifle, that's the one to go with. Gas.
Yeah, my buddy just bought a Savage. What is it? A Savage Model 12 has the bull barrel on it. 6.5 Creedmoor, and they had them on sale for like $300 and something. And he's been shooting it, and he absolutely loves it. It's heavy,
right?
But super accurate.
Kind of the mid-range and the barrel weight is what they call a predator weight. So if you're going to carry it hunting, it's heavier hell, but it's light enough that you can hunt short distances with if you wanted to really bad enough. But I was watching another YouTuber on here, and he had one like that. I mean, he was drilling stuff at 1,000 yards, so I thought, the hell, I'll go for it. And I did, and I'm really glad I did. I just got to get my loads tuned in now to where I can shoot a bug hole at 100.
Yeah.
I got one here. See, Duke, you have a good personality for this type of format. Very informative. Glad you cleaned it up. Good luck. Hope this goes well for you. Look forward to your future vids and live streams. Well, thank you, T-Rex. So it looks like.
Oh, before I forget, that Jakeaway was asking early on in the chat, and I didn't answer him, how the documentary was going. And so, for those of you who aren't aware what he's talking about, I was recently in it's a docudrama. So it's a documentary, but it's filmed more like a movie, more parts and dialogue, more character driven. It's about the Battle of the Little Bighorn, or Custer's Last Stand. The filming is done for it. It is in post-production now, and they hope to be releasing it on the next anniversary of the Little Bighorn, which is June 25th next year. And they're looking like probably Netflix, and they'll probably do some releases in select theaters that are interested in doing it, like film festivals and stuff like that.
Well, I was going to ask that about that, and then we kind of got into other topics. But yeah, that I seen some of your I think it's on Instagram. I seen a few of your posts on that. And it looks like
it was a good time. It was fun. It was a lot of fun.
I wish I had time to do that, but I've got so many hobbies. And never have time.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, but it's one of those things where I've had a couple opportunities to be in these like little low. Well, this one wasn't. I wouldn't say a low budget deal. It would be to some people, but so the first movie deals that I worked with here back in like 2015, the Big Muddy Western series, they can be bought online. That was like low budget. It was a lot of fun, and I went through a divorce several years ago, and I was in kind of this funk where afterwards where I didn't really know like how to move forward. And one of my buddies had said something to me that kind of got my attention, like, man, you used to be so goal driven. And I got to thinking, man, I don't even have any goals whatsoever. And so trying to put my life back together, I thought, you know what, I need some goals. And the only thing I could think of was to go back to when I was a kid. And what is something that I always wanted to do? I wanted to be an extra in a Western movie, because my mom had been an extra in a Western movie, and we just thought she was a movie star, growing up. So I wanted that for my kids, and I wanted to be on a hunting TV show. And I wrote both of those down because a wise man had once said, a goal that's not written down is just a wish, and wishes don't come true. But goals have a plan and action, and then they do. So I wrote them down, and within a year I did both of them. So it's been a fun hobby, and if nothing else, my kids or my grandkids will be able to see me on TV.
Yeah, I've had to work with Hollywood a couple times where I work at, and I always thought I'd like to be a movie star, and then I had to deal with Hollywood while at the same time trying to maintain my job and deal with the public, because God forbid my boss wouldn't shut, and rightfully he shouldn't have, because we're there more for the visitors than we are for the cameras.
Right.
So I had to deal with, trying to get visitors oriented while they're trying to film. And it took Hollywood all of about 5 minutes to piss me off to the point where I didn't want anything else to do with it.
I will say one thing. All this YouTube stuff has given me an appreciation for those people that are like in video production. Like the reasons why they want the light to be a certain way and the sound to be a certain way and people to be in certain spots. Man, it used to grind my gears, but I get it a little bit more now. I'm a little more patient with it now just because I've had to do some producing of my own, and gosh, it's a lot of work.
I will say this. I've dealt with production companies from Hollywood, and I've dealt with production companies out of England. I dealt with the BBC. And above the two, the BBC was awesome. They came in, they said, we're going to film for 2 hours. We've got a 2-hour window to film in, and we'll be out of your hair. And I'll be damned if they didn't get in and get done in an hour and a half, and they was gone. We didn't have any mess to clean up, nothing. I mean, it was basically wham, bam, thank you, ma'am, and they were done.
Huh.
And, that was.
Can you say any of the productions that you've worked on?
The one was it was a TV series for the BBC. It was Great American Railway Journeys. I actually got to meet Michael Patello, who had something to do with being Prime Minister of England at one point. He was a really nice guy. I wasn't very fond of their main production lady because, well, I'm not going to get into politics there, but I dealt with him, and they came in. They told me what I wanted to do, and where I was working at, I had to dress in an 1840s Army uniform. And the place I work at, they've got plenty of uniforms, but nothing at my size. So I actually look like I'm about 15 times fatter than what I actually am because I'm stuffed into this tiny little friggin' uniform. I mean, it looks like I got a whale stuck in my butt and I got a kangaroo stuck in the front of me. But anyway, I was on there for probably about 15 seconds and I talked with the guy a little bit. And then the other one, I wound up not being in it. They wanted to have me in it, but after trying to deal with visitors and then them wanting me to be on set and stuff and back and forth, because as a government employee, I basically can get used by anybody for filming at this location, and I can't say no. I finally got tired of it, and I told my boss, I said, you know what? I said, I'm here on overtime, send me home. I don't want to be here anymore, and they did. And then there was another one. It was a cheap B-Western, and that crew wasn't bad. They were kind of a pain in the butt, but they weren't the worst. And that one was called Canyon Trail. And it came out back in 2017, I think it was. So if you look that up, they wound up not using the scene I was in. But you see me for about a half a second as they're coming across the front of the building where I work at. You can see me walking through the gate just as they swap into the next scene. So I'm only there for maybe a tenth of a second.
Huh.
But the one with the BBC, and I don't know if you can find it because BBC's got weird rules on their TV shows appearing in America. So I seen a bootleg copy on YouTube once, and I haven't been able to find it since then. But that was the one where I'm in it for a good 15 seconds or so.
Cool.
But if I had to do it again, I don't think I would do it.
For the right project, I'd do it again. So, Jake, to answer your question, it's called Custer's Strategy of Defeat, and it'll be produced next June. It'll be available.
All right. Well, we wound up staying another extra 10 minutes, so.
If you didn't have any questions in 10 minutes, then we can probably leave.
Looks like it's pretty quiet there, so I think we'll call it good. I want to thank everybody for joining in on the site chat. I apologize that we didn't read it as closely as we have in the past, but I think we had a pretty good discussion tonight, and I hope we can get Clayton back on here sometime in the future. So
it was a good time. Thanks for inviting me.
You bet, and thank you for coming aboard. And all of you have a safe journey, safe night. Stay tuned, and remember, keep your powder dry.